It's Gridiron Betting Insights right here on QLTV. I am your host, Jay Sanin. Of course, I thank you from the bottom of my heart to everybody tuning in either live here on Thursday night or whenever you catch the show on demand. And we have a big show here this evening. Of course, tonight we preview week 9 in the NFL. We start with our Thursday night football pregame show, the degenerate pregame show, as we've coined it, the pregame show that is much better than whatever they put on television these days, as we preview Packers Niners, a game where we ask one very simple question: should it even be happening tonight? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more pertaining to tonight's game. In fact, I have a bet on tonight's game that I would like to make you aware of in just a moment. We also give you the BetQL game of the week, featuring data from BetQL's treasure trove of football betting knowledge. We also give you quick slants, fast previews, real fast previews of every game remaining on the week 9 schedule. And at the end of the show, for your own personal information, whether you want to tail them or fade them or anything in between, my NFL picks for week 9 are coming up as well on the show. Of course, the show tonight brought to you by BetQL. Use BetQL.co for all your NFL betting data needs. Over 10,000 simulations of each NFL game. Of course, they give you projections with detailed information, scoring on both sides, first half point totals for each team as well, so you can apply those to the betting market. They give you a projection. They tell you how much they see the game being decided by and how many total points are scored. You can then look at the betting markets and say, hey, there's a 5-point difference. There's a big value on whichever side the data points to. You can use it to your advantage, make some money betting on the NFL using BetQL. Use promo code Sanin, 20% off all subscriptions on the site. Now let's get right into it, folks. Your degenerate pregame show, as we call it, one of my favorite parts of each week. Of course, you want to weigh in on any of the games, do so at the bottom of the screen, the chat box on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you catch the show. Love to interact with you throughout the program. So your degenerate pregame show, folks, we have the Packers tonight, a 7-point favorite against the San Francisco 49ers. And as I mentioned, the big question for this game is, should it even be happening? Because there is COVID-19 just swimming around the San Francisco 49ers locker room. 4 players, 4 key players, mind you, added to the COVID-19 reserve list for the Niners. You have Kendrick Bourne, Brandon Ayuk, offensive tackle Trent Williams, and Deebo Samuel. Now, you hear those 4 players. Number one, they're all on the offensive side of the ball. That's troubling. 3 of them are wide receivers. That's even more troubling. And when you factor in all the injuries going into this that the Niners are also dealing with, you are dealing with a really sad situation on the offensive side of the ball for the Niners. Jimmy Garoppolo, out, probably done for the season. George Kittle, out, probably done for the season. Tevin Coleman, out for this game for the Niners. So if you're the Niners, you're without several of your best wide receivers. You're without your starting tight end, your starting quarterback, and the running back who Kyle Shanahan brought over from Atlanta because of all the success that they had together. That spells disaster. It also spells, ladies and gentlemen, an under for tonight. Total is 48.5. I have the under for this evening. Again, cluster injuries, they can be overvalued depending on the position. But when it comes to the wide receiver spot, when you're dealing with a backup quarterback to begin with, that is a huge key for the Niners. You have Nick Mullins. He is actually going to be the starter. It will not be C.J. Beathard. Thankfully for all of our eyeballs, it will not be C.J. Beathard at quarterback. It will be Nick Mullins. Mullins not great to begin with. You take away his best weapons. Those are the guys who are going to get you separation, who are going to make things happen down the field and make room for Mullins to have easier throws. He can't do that without those guys. He's going to be relying on backup talent all over the field. And that, of course, is a huge concern tonight for San Francisco. Big reason why I am playing the under. Now, for the Niners, strategically, with all of that in mind, what are you going to do when you don't have all your best players on the offensive side of the ball? You're going to try and run the football. You are going to try and keep the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands, because Aaron Rodgers, Packers dealing with some injuries on offense as well, but they still have a superhero at quarterback. Niners, their game plan has to be to try and keep the ball out of his hands, because they will not be able to keep up with the Packers if this turns into a shootout. Now, we talk about the injury issues for the Packers. Aaron Jones, he is active tonight for the Packers. David Bakhtiari, offensive lineman, key piece for that Packers team, not active tonight. He will miss the game for Green Bay. Issues in the secondary also from an injury perspective for the Packers. Kevin King, the most notable there, a couple of safeties out as well for Green Bay. But again, this begs the question, can San Francisco make Green Bay pay for those injuries in the defensive backfield? I think the answer is no, given all of the issues surrounding that offense for the 49ers. Now, the Packers, it is worth mentioning, they will have revenge on the brain tonight. Of course, you never go out there on the football field just looking to have fun out there. You're always looking to mangle your opponent in whatever way you can. But this is especially impactful for the Packers tonight. They were embarrassed in the NFC Championship game last year at this very stadium against the Niners. This week, they have a depleted Niners team they have a chance to take on and a chance to get revenge against. You can expect them to pin their ears back, so to speak. Don't know where that phrase originated from, but that, I think, is going to be the MO for the Packers here tonight. Now, San Francisco, better defensive team than the Packers. There's no denying that. But again, Green Bay, very much aided by all of the injuries to San Francisco. And of course, even when the Niners were healthy, the Packers, a more explosive offense. Of course, the combination of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams has been tearing it up these last couple of weeks. But even beyond them, just a more explosive offense overall for Green Bay. They should be able to get the job done. The question is, can they do it laying a touchdown? That is, of course, the more complicated query here. Now, personally, I don't want to lay a touchdown with a road team on a short week. That typically doesn't lend itself to success in the betting market. But I am on the under tonight. I just think, again, so many issues now with the San Francisco offense. They are undeniable. And yes, the Packers will get theirs. They will put some points on the board. And who knows? Maybe Nick Mullins has a decent game against a secondary of the Packers that is less than desirable. You know, Kyle Shanahan has plenty of misdirection in his arsenal that he can use to at least move the field position battle to his will. But overall, I think Green Bay controls the game. I don't think it's a barn burner. I don't think we see a ton of points on either side of the field. Worth noting, by the way, we talk about this Niners team as a very strong, a competent team in the NFC. It is worth noting in terms of strength of victory this year, the Niners were only better than one team in the conference. That is the Dallas Cowboys. And you look at why. I mean, half of the victories so far this season for the Niners have come against the two teams that occupy MetLife Stadium. The Jets, who haven't won a game this season, the Giants, who have won a game this season, but have only, they've barely scratched the win column on the year. So again, outside of that, they're 2-4. Outside of those two gimme games are the Niners, and I don't think that's going to get any better as the injuries continue to mount up and the COVID-19 now continues to mount up for San Francisco. So that's my play. You got like 10 minutes if you're watching the show live. Go get your under 48.5 tickets punched for this game. Otherwise, I don't like laying the points here with Green Bay, but you're not going to get me to take 7 with Nick Mullins against Aaron Rodgers either. So nothing on the side, but under 48.5 is my play for Thursday Night Football. Again, got to wonder. I mean, I understand you got to get your TV money and all that fun stuff, but I mean, it was this week that several Niners came down with COVID-19, and they're going to play the game. Hopefully, it doesn't spread. Maybe put Aaron Rodgers in one of those plastic hamster balls to keep him safe because he is, of course, a footballing treasure. We need to keep him safe at all costs. I digress. That's your degenerate pregame show. We move on to the BetQL game of the week, ladies and gentlemen. The BetQL game of the week this week is the most important thing happening in the state of Arizona right now. That's right. I'm talking about Dolphins and Cardinals. And what a fascinating matchup this is. A lot of great games on the schedule this week. The Thursday night game is great, as we just talked about. Sunday Night Football, we'll talk about it a little later. Great as well. And some really fun afternoon games as well on the schedule. Loving this week's schedule in the NFL. But to me, one of the most exciting games may go under the radar to some. Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa going at it in the desert. Dolphins 4.5-point dogs against the Cardinals, total 48.5. Now, these two teams, two of the top 3 teams in the NFL in terms of their margin against the spread. Now, what does that mean? That means when you factor in the point spread, how much are teams beating the number by? How much are they losing to the number by? These two teams have done an excellent job of beating the number convincingly this year. Dolphins, they're beating the spread by an average of 11.4 points per game this season, greatly exceeding expectations. Brian Flores deserves all the respect in the world for that. Of course, it helps when you beat the tar out of the Los Angeles Rams last week the way that the Dolphins did. Definitely help boost that number. But again, everything the Dolphins have done so far this season to get above 500 in what was thought to be kind of a transitional year deserves a world of respect heading into this one. Cardinals doing a great job as well, beating the spread by 6.6 points per game on average this season. And a lot of that has to do with their defense. Both defenses allowing similar yardage on the season, but the Cardinals, we saw it. I mean, second half against the Seahawks wasn't a pretty first half, but they locked up that Seattle offense in the second half, made big plays when they needed it. And that's kind of the hallmark of this Arizona team. Not necessarily pretty for 60 minutes, but they get the job done, and they do have a solid defense to thank for that. Cardinals, of course, much more explosive on offense, and I think that's the key to this game is the offenses because both these defenses are strong. You have a spot now. Tua Tagovailoa is playing his first professional road game. And of course, he's not dealing with 80,000 screaming fans, but he is dealing with his first travel week, his first full week as a quarterback. And of course, he didn't have 2 weeks to prepare for this game like he did to get ready for the Rams. Tua, by the way, didn't look good in that first game against the LA Rams. Threw for under 100 yards, didn't make any terrible mistakes throwing the football. He did have the one fumble when he was just lit up from the blind side, but again, that's fine. That's fine. He played okay, but of course, you need more than 100 yards passing if you're going to be convincing and win games consistently in the NFL. He hasn't done that yet. And I think this game is going to be a struggle for the Dolphins as a whole. Situation where they may be overvalued because of last week where they demolished the Rams, but you look closer at that game. Fumble return for a touchdown on a play that started in the red zone for the Rams. They fumble it long return for the Miami defense. And then, of course, they had a long punt return for a touchdown on special teams as well. So they were not moving the ball in ways that you would call sustainable. Those are not plays that you expect to happen on a regular basis. They're kind of those fluky plays. And that not going to get the job done here against the Cardinals team that has been pretty detail oriented so far this season. Now, this is the BetQL game of the week. So what does BetQL say about these two teams? BetQL's graded this as a pretty big mismatch, especially on the offensive side of the ball. BetQL has graded the Dolphins offense as a D plus so far this season. Compared to the Cardinals, they earn an A minus grade, of course, led by Kyler Murray. They have DeAndre Hopkins weapons all over in the receiving core for Arizona. And I think that's the key difference. These teams pretty similarly graded. Cardinals a little bit better on defense. But the offensive mismatch in this game, I think, is going to be the key. I'm going to lay the 4.5 at home with the Cardinals in this game. Again, better on both sides of the ball. You have a more experienced quarterback. And while Tua may have gotten the better of their matchup in the college football playoff way back when, Kyler is doing much better at the NFL level. Of course, he has more than one game under his belt. That certainly helps. Give me the Cardinals. I will lay the points here as we look to what is going to be one of the coolest games of the week, even if it doesn't necessarily end up being one of the best games of the week. So excited to see really the future of the quarterback position in this league. A couple dudes who can move and throw. And as we see more guys like Mahomes and Lamar Jackson into the league and make huge impacts, those statues, the Tom Brady's, the Drew Breeses, they're going to go extinct at some point, and we're going to keep seeing these mobile, athletic, dynamic quarterbacks continue to take their place, and it's only going to mean fun and exciting things for us football fans. Again, laying the points with the Cardinals, but can't wait to see this matchup either way. Of course, the BetQL game of the week brought to you by BetQL.co or the BetQL app. Use promo code Sanin, save 20% off all subscriptions on the site. Again, over 10,000 simulations of every game to create projections with a massive sample size using tons of data. You do not want to miss it. BetQL.co. Promo code SANIN, SANIN, 20% off all subscriptions on the site. Now, allow me to take a deep breath, ladies and gentlemen, because it is time for the fastest set of NFL previews you will ever watch. Quick Slants, ladies and gentlemen, where we break down every game on the schedule, aside from the two we just broke down, really quickly. So here we go. Ready? Deep breath, everybody. One time. Bring it in. And now here we go. Quick slants. We will start with the Houston Texans, 6.5-point favorites at the Jacksonville Jaguars, total 50.5. You remember these teams played a few weeks ago. The Texans got their first win of the season in that game, won by 16 at home, covered the spread against the Jaguars. By the way, that was the only time this season that the Texans have covered the spread. They are 1-6 against the number. The one came against the Jaguars, and that was a pretty tight game in the first half. A couple things go differently in that second half. They might be looking at 0-7 against the spread. Jacksonville, second worst defense in the league, allowing 6.4 yards a play so far this season. But it is worth noting the Texans not much better in that regard. They're allowing 6.1 yards per play for the season. Problem with this, you have two bad defenses. You have two offenses you can't trust. Gardner Minshew, it's all falling apart for Minshew mania with the Jaguars. Deshaun Watson and company, though, not much better on the offensive side of the ball. This is a relatively evenly matched game, even if the brand recognition would lean toward the Texans. Staying away from it, don't know what to do with either of these squads. Now, another game that might be the best of the weekend, Seahawks, 3-point favorites on the road, taking on the Buffalo Bills, total 55. You might end up, folks, with a situation where it might take longer to count all the points scored in this game than it's taken all the battleground states to count votes, because we are going to see a lot of points in this ball game. Two of the most explosive offensives in the NFL. The question in this game is the mismatch between Russell Wilson and Josh Allen big enough to overcome the horrendous scheduling spot that the Seattle Seahawks find themselves in. Folks, we got ourselves a good old-fashioned sandwich spot in this game. Seattle just played a division rivalry game against the San Francisco 49ers. They won that game convincingly. Of course, Jimmy Garoppolo getting hurt didn't help the Niners in that game. But now, okay, they do that. They go east to Buffalo. Next week, they're going to have to go back west, play a road game, another division game against the Los Angeles Rams. So you don't want to say this is a look-ahead spot for the Seahawks, but of course, in such a competitive division, this might be the game that you care the least about out of those three. Could benefit the Bills in this situation. However, can the Bills take advantage? The Bills 6-2 straight up this season, but they have a point differential of -1. What that tells you is they have not been dominant in the 6 games they've won, whereas in the games they've lost, they've been beaten pretty convincingly. Those 2 games, of course, come against the Chiefs and the Titans. I understand if you're gun shy about taking Josh Allen over Russell Wilson. I really am. I am going to take the 3 points with the Buffalo Bills. I am going to trust in the sandwich spot. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, just by looking at me, I'm a man who likes my sandwiches, and I am going to rely on the sandwich spot. I'm going to take the Bills plus the 3 points in this one. Another game I have a play on, Ravens -1.5 at the Indianapolis Colts, total of 47. Of course, the Ravens coming off of that brutal loss, just an abysmal loss at home against the Steelers. Colts blew out the Lions last week. And this is a spot where, because of those 2 results last week, you have a line that might not be as big as you would have seen had the results been reversed last week. Ravens off a bad loss, Colts off a big win. So you have the number come in a little bit from what it might have been. And I like the Ravens -1.5 here. Colts, they have a division game next week at the Tennessee Titans, a game that could very well decide the fate of the AFC South. Again, you're not looking past the Baltimore Ravens, a quality football team, but you have to pick and choose your battles in the NFL. And of course, winning the division, the most important thing you can do as an NFL team. Something's got to give in this game, folks. Ravens 3-0 on the road this season. Colts 3-0 at home. One of them's going to take their first loss in that situation. Worth pointing out, the Colts have played the worst strength of schedule in the NFL so far this year. They've been beaten up on bad teams. We saw them get beaten pretty convincingly by the Cleveland Browns and really their biggest test of the year so far. We've seen them struggle at home against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals previously. So I don't think home field's a huge contributing factor here. I think that this is the kind of game, again, this is the kind of game that the Ravens win. They beat teams that they're even slightly better than, but when it comes to playing the elite teams in the league, that's where they fall flat on their face. The Colts are not an elite team. They might be the best of kind of the middling teams in this game. Give me the Ravens -1.5. We've got DJ checking in. DJ, he says he likes Baltimore -1.5 as well. He thinks they come out strong. DJ, I couldn't agree more. Congratulations, DJ. on the good opinion. I appreciate you. Going on, quick slants. Lions +4 at the Vikings, total 52.5. Now, the Lions, again, blown out by the Colts last week. That was an embarrassing home loss. Vikings got 4 Dalvin Cook touchdowns to get the biggest win they'll get all season over the Green Bay Packers on the road. Now, the Vikings, usually a team with a great home field advantage, right? They get the Prince music playing, the stupid Viking horn every 5 seconds. Hasn't been the case this year, folks. Vikings 0-3 at home this season. The lack of fans really making an impact there. And of course, the Lions so far this season, Lions who just lost to the Colts is what I meant to say. Anyway, I digress. They're 3-1 on the road. They're better on the road than they are at home so far this year. Lions come into this game with a better defense. The Minnesota offense, by the way, low-key explosive this year, second in the league in yards per play behind the Seahawks. They're just better games on the board than a division rivalry game between two inconsistent teams. Not worth betting on here on either side. Might see a lot of points, but that total of over 50, a little too high for my liking as well. We move on in quick slants. Another game with potential playoff implications, a lot of them this week. Again, I love this schedule. Bears +6 at the Titans, total of 46.5. Again, we said it on Tuesday. Both teams have lost 2 games in a row. So you have a pair of desperate teams coming into this game looking to break losing streaks that could really affect their season adversely. Tennessee 2-5 against the spread, despite a 5-2 straight up record. Now they're having trouble closing teams out because of their defense. They've given up a ton of points this season. We saw it last week. They gave up into the 30s against the Bengals. Earlier in the year, they gave up 30 points against the Jaguars. These are not good teams, and the Titans are giving up a ton of points. The question is, can the horrible Bears defense join those teams and score a bunch of points on the Titans? That remains to be seen. Bears 5-3 against the spread this year, despite the fact that, again, they cannot move the ball. Titans averaging over a yard per play more than the Bears this season. It's almost up to 1.5 yards. It is a stark difference between these two offenses, but the Bears have an advantage on defense. This is a game, by the way, Taylor Lewan, left tackle for the Titans, out for the season. You deal with the Chicago pass rush. You need all the help you can get on the offensive line. That is going to be a key loss for the Titans in this game. I would think the Titans are going to do better than the Foles, Trubisky mountain of feces that the Bears have going at quarterback here. But again, not going to play this game because I cannot rely on the Titans to play a solid 60 minutes on both sides of the ball. A couple teams that might be turning a corner in our next game here on Quick Slants on the GBI show. Broncos +4 at the Falcons, total of 50. Both of these teams riding high after last week. Broncos down 3 scores to the Chargers in the second half last week, came all the way back, won it outright as time expired. One of the most fun endings to a football game you've seen in a while. Falcons, on the other hand, they went outdoors. They got their first win outside of the season last Thursday. They beat the Carolina Panthers in the rain, in the elements. And I tell you what, I did not expect that. Of course, the Falcons, because they played on Thursday, they have some extra time to prepare for this game. And they're going to need it because they're taking on a much better defense. Atlanta, one of the worst defenses in the league, allowing 1.3 yards per play more than the Denver Broncos on the season. And you wonder coming into this game, the Broncos, they were staring 2-5 dead in the face. They get that miracle comeback win. Now you're 3-4. Who knows? With the extra playoff spot this season, of course, 7 playoff teams in each conference, maybe an 8th, depending on what the NFL rules, if there are any games that are missed and they decide to add one. Playoff positioning, not impossible for them. Do they come out energized after potentially a season-saving game last week? That remains to be seen. I'm not betting either side, but I do think that there is something to the fact that the Broncos might come out a little fired up after seeing, seeing the light, seeing death right in front of their eyes and kind of resuscitating themselves at the last minute last week against the Chargers. Moving on here in quick slants, we look at the Kansas City Chiefs. They are 10.5-point favorites at home against the Carolina Panthers. Total 52.5. Chiefs, the best point differential in the league so far this season. They have outscored opponents so far this year by 101 points. Nobody else is in the triple digits. Of course, they're 6-2 against the spread, which is important and impressive because the Chiefs, they're a team that usually has to lay a big number, and they are beating teams by big numbers. Of course, they did it last week as 20-point favorites against the lowly New York Jets. Now, the Panthers, again, they lost as a slight home favorite last week against the Falcons. They did have more time to prepare. And of course, when you're taking on Patrick Mahomes and this Kansas City offense, you need all the time to prepare that you can get. Helping the Panthers here, Christian McCaffrey coming back this week for Carolina, but we don't know if he's going to be on a pitch count, so to speak, if he'll be on a snap count for Carolina. Carolina's offense, by the way, even without him for most of the season, only 0.3 of a yard less per play than the Chiefs, who are, of course, thought of as one of the gold standards of offense in the NFL. Carolina's been moving the ball, but they've struggled to get it done consistently. Concerned again with McCaffrey and how available he will be for this game. We're going to stay off it. I don't like laying that big a number with the Chiefs, who do struggle sometimes on defense. If McCaffrey comes back and plays a full load of snaps, they could put up a ton of points against the Kansas City defense. We'll leave it alone. Now we go to the NFC East, unfortunately. And we talk about the New York Giants, a 2.5-point dog against the football team. That's right, the Washington football team. Total 42.5. Again, this is a game that could very well impact draft positioning at the end of the season. Two of the worst offenses in the NFL. In fact, two of the bottom 4 offenses in yards per play meeting up in this game. The Giants have won the last 4 meetings between these two teams, which I'd say is great because I'm a Giants fan, but it has hurt them in the NFL draft order. And who knows, we might see that again, as it seems like the football team is doing a much better job of positioning themselves for future success than are the Giants. Listen, there's no reason to bet this game. Two anemic offenses, but two teams that top to bottom, they cannot produce a consistent 60 minutes of football, even if the Giants did nearly upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. Now we go to the late window, and there are some fun games in the late window. We'll start with the Raiders. A pick 'em at the Chargers, total 51.5. Raiders, of course, surviving 40-mile-an-hour winds to beat the Browns 16-6 last week. And, of course, the Chargers blowing that 3-score lead to the Broncos at the very end of that contest last week. Last week, by the way, it took 40-mile-an-hour winds to deliver the first under of the season in a Raiders game. So 5-1-1 now are the Raiders to the over so far this season. The Raiders, by the way, 2 games ahead of the Chargers in the AFC West standings this year, but a better point differential just by a little bit, by 10 points for the Chargers so far this season. Chargers at 2-5, one of the best 2-5 teams in the history of football, if I can say that. These two teams, I think they're going to put points on the board. I like the over in this game, over 51.5. I also like the Chargers to win the game. Justin Herbert has been cooking this season. I think he's going to do it again against a less than stellar Raiders pass defense. The Raiders giving up 7.4 yards per attempt to opposing quarterbacks so far this season. That puts them in a tie for 24th in the NFL. I think we're going to see a lot of points both ways. You don't have to deal with weather concerns this week. We're going to be in beautiful Los Angeles for this game. And I think, again, Chargers and the over 51.5. We got 2 plays on that game. Hopefully it does not come back to bite us. Moving on, quick slants. 14 points is the spread as the Steelers head to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Total 41.5. And folks, we are not going to see Ben DiNucci anymore. He is being replaced. It's going to be either Garrett Gilbert, of course, the quarterback of the Orlando Apollos in the Alliance of American Football. It's been his best professional success, or Cooper Rush. Either one of them will be the quarterback for the Cowboys in this game. And I'm very sad that this happened this week because I was planning to say when previewing this game and talking about Ben DiNucci, hey, I'm throwing over here. But now I can't do that. I can only do it parenthetically like I just did. Steelers, this is their 3rd straight road game, by the way. And they have done it 2 weeks in a row. They have beaten elite level competition on the road. They beat the Titans and then they beat the Ravens. Both tight games, but they came out with the W in both spots. Now you have to wonder, after those 2 tough games, grind them out games, can the Steelers blow out a Cowboys team who, by the way, have been very easy to blow out this season, but do the Steelers have the energy in the tank to get through a third straight road game and do it in dominant fashion, which they hadn't done in the first two. This might be a spot where you take, we talked about it on Tuesday, letdown spot. Do you take the first half on the underdog? Might be a spot where you do that with the Cowboys. Of course, good luck doing that with this Cowboys defense and with really no idea what you're going to get out of the quarterback position, although it can't possibly be any worse than Ben DiNucci. Dallas, 0-8 against the spread so far this year. They are averaging 10.1 points per game worse, even with the spread factored in, a minus 10.1 points per game margin against the number. And of course, they've kind of been underdogs recently. I mean, that was with them being almost a double-digit dog last week against the Eagles. They didn't cover that game either. They have been abysmal so far this season. 14 points is too many to lay with the Steelers in this spot after the brutal scheduling, but I'm not taking the Cowboys either, leaving this game alone. Now, we talk about possibly the game of the week in the NFL, and it is Sunday Night Football, Saints Bucks. Saints +4 at the Bucks, total of 51. This game could decide the NFC South, ladies and gentlemen. There is a half game difference in the division right now. Saints a half a game back of Tampa Bay. Of course, the Saints beat Tampa Bay in week 1 this season in the Superdome, but that was a game where the offense for Tampa Bay, of course, gelling with all of those pieces brought into the fold, most notably Tom Brady. And folks, there's a new piece joining the Bucks this week. Antonio Brown, set to make his debut for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how involved he gets. We'll see how many snaps he gets. Of course, Tom Brady, plenty of options to choose from before Brown got there. Question is now, can the Saints stop Tampa Bay's offense with Brown in the equation? Possible square dog situation here with the Saints, given that they won the first matchup and Tampa Bay has been playing such better football over these last few weeks. They've done it predominantly with their defense, second best in the league in terms of yards per play allowed. They're one of 3 teams allowing under 5 yards a play on the defensive side of the ball. Buccaneers, by the way, 3-0 at home this season. That includes a 28-point victory against the Green Bay Packers. I am not going against them given how well they've been playing, but I am also not trying to take just 4 points either with the Saints. We're going to sit back, relax, and watch this game play out. And I'm telling you, come out with an Antonio Brown creamsicle Buccaneers jersey, I will send you a blank check, NFL. I'm just letting you know that right now. Finally, on Quick Slants, we look at Monday Night Football. The New England Patriots in an AFC East battle, 7.5-point favorites against the New York Jets, total 42.5. The Jets 0-8 straight up on the season, 1-7 against the spread. Patriots, by the way, not a whole lot better, 2-5 straight up, 3-4 against the spread. This, by the way, a must-win game for the Patriots if they are going to keep even a flicker of hope, a glimmer of hope alive in the playoff picture in the AFC. Pats, by the way, they have the Ravens next week at home. So again, a potential look-ahead spot here. Even though it's a division game, even though Bill Belichick would probably send you to go work in a coal mine if you looked ahead to anything from any situation, possibly human nature. You have Lamar Jackson and the Ravens coming up next week. You might not be quite as worried about the Jets as you need to be. Jets, they average 4.2 yards a play, almost a half yard per play worse than the next worst team in the league in that regard. They are almost a half yard worse than anyone else in the league in terms of their offensive production per play. 31st in the league is the Washington football team. If you're gaining a half yard less per play than the Washington football team, you're doing something wrong. We'll leave it at that. Both teams giving up over 6 yards of play on defense. I'm staying away from this game. I think the Patriots should roll, but they should have rolled against the Denver Broncos. They should have come back against the Buffalo Bills last week. They didn't do either of those things, so I don't trust them to do it here, even if it is just against the New York Jets. So that is Quick Slants for this week, folks. We have just previewed every game on the NFL schedule. We've done it quickly. I may or may not have pulled a hammy along the way. So let's look back at our picks for week 9. It has been an abysmal last few weeks for yours truly, but you know what? We're going to keep shooting, folks, because we have a whole half a season left to go, plus the playoffs to get it turned around. So let's take a look. Under 48.5 in tonight's Packers-Niners game. Ravens -1.5 at the Colts. Bills +3 over the Seahawks. Chargers pick them over the Raiders at home and the over 51.5. and the Cardinals minus 4.5 against the Miami Dolphins in that tantalizing Kyler versus Tua matchup. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the GBI show for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Of course, back on Tuesday and here on Thursday as well. We'll be back on Tuesday. We'll talk about what we learned from week 9 in the NFL. We will also update the GBI show power rankings. You won't want to miss that. The Gridiron Betting Insight show on Tuesday. We'll have all that fun stuff and a whole lot more. Until then, this is Jay Sanin signing off. Good luck on your bets this weekend, and we will